Welcome to CXO-Talk. I am Michael Krigsman, and I apologize for the problems that we've had today with Google Hangout. Bad Google. We love your products, but when it doesn't work, we get unhappy. Anyway, I'm here with my co-host, Vala Afshar. Vala, how you doing?
Michael, great to be on the air with you.
Finally.
Finally.
And we have with us today Dion Hinchcliffe, who's the Chief Strategy Officer of the Dachas Group. Dion, how are you doing? How are you today?
I'm doing very well, and thanks for having me, Michael. Good to see you, Vala. I look forward to our conversation today.
So let's dive right in. Dion, tell us a little bit about your background and your current role as Chief Strategy Officer at the Dachas Group.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about the Dachas Group and then my background just briefly. My company was acquired by the Dachas Group back in 2010. I had a boutique management consultancy where I helped organizations become more effectively social, primarily working for Fortune 500 Global 2000 firms. And since then, I've become the Chief Strategy Officer of the organization. We have a big data platform where we listen to all of the global conversations taking place for the top 35,000 brands or so. We developed that because there's really no service that effectively has a business perspective, effective way of applying all that social data out there to our business problems. We're also a management consultancy and agency and do kind of everything around social business. We've been lucky, I think, to have a really good profile in the industry. And we're generally credited for having coined the term social business. We're really, I think, key early on in the industry of identifying that this was going to be a major way that organizations were going to engage and communicate. Myself, I've been working in technology and helping organizations apply it to their business for the last 20 years. I've been an enterprise architect, chief architect for a number of very large companies and government organizations. Everything from aerospace and missile defense to financial services and insurance. And I really enjoyed the challenge of applying technology to really hard business problems. That's what we can do now in a way that we couldn't. Businesses 100 years ago had a very small technology set they could apply. Now we have almost infinite options, so which ones do you apply? And so I help organizations do that. And Michael, you and I are colleagues on seeing that for many years, and I like exploring those stories and telling them to the world so we can help understand what the opportunities are, what the challenges are as well. And that's kind of how I got here.
So Dion, I mean, you and I have had the experience of working together in the past, so I know about your background, but how does a hardcore enterprise architect guy end up doing social business? Why is it so important to you that now you've devoted this phase of your career to social business?
That's a great question, and I think that a lot of us do this, quit great jobs and let's say join the internet startup because you think about when I'm all done with this, what do I want to say that I really did? Did I help an organization incrementally improve some corner of what they did? Or did I help an entirely new way of communicating enter the world stage? And I think you really look at it that way. And I can't say that I was principally responsible in any way, but I was very pleased that I've had a front row seat and have helped a lot of organizations, I feel anyway, really move into and change fundamentally who they are as organizations. And I saw, when social media first started to happen, we called it Web 2.0 way back then, even though Web 2.0 is a bigger idea. But we saw how we saw these broad demographic changes, not just tens and not just hundreds of millions of people, but now 1.5 billion people have fundamentally changed their communication habits, and everyone can now communicate and engage with everyone else in the world essentially for free, right? We have these global, frictionless, free platforms for self-expression. And I think, and I don't think this is hyperbole, it's bigger than the printing press was, which a few people that could afford very expensive ways to disseminate information one way. Now we've given tools for everyone to engage and connect globally, and we don't know what to do with it. We're just now starting to explore it, and businesses are in the same quandary. So I didn't want to miss that, and I saw how big it was going to be a generational thing, the biggest thing that ever happened that I was ever going to see, I think. and I had to be part of it.
No, absolutely. So, Dion, you obviously, you're one of my favorite subject matter experts and one of my favorite blogs to read when it comes to social business. In my view, you're one of the top experts in the world when it comes to this subject. And you covered social business by design in your book, which if you're going through social business transformation and you're any level executive, CIO, CDO, CMO, and most importantly, CEO, this is the book for you to read.
It's a great book.
Thank you very much.
It's an excellent book.
A lot of my tweets come from this book. Just we're on the record.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great to hear.
All right, the secrets are coming out.
The
That's what we
secrets
like.
are coming
we
out.
like that.
But in this book, you highlight a lot of companies. I think it's chapter 3. You talk about companies that are going through social business transformation, and certainly, you've interviewed and you've consulted big companies. So what have you learned as you speak to these executives in these organizations? Some you reference as large as IBM, some startups. What's the most important lesson? Is it culture, technology, data-driven mindset? What can you share with our audience?
So, and I do spend virtually all of my time talking with and working with executive teams of large companies, and have for a number of years now. So, I get to talk to them all the time about how hard change is. If we really want to talk about the core, and this is true of social media in particular because it's so culturally misaligned with most companies, but change is hard, and it's painful. And we all pay lip service to it, but even we ourselves have a hard time changing, even when we want to. And this social media is a very big transformation, and it's something that, if you want to be a social business, all you have to do is wait long enough. It's going to happen to you anyway, right? The thing is, you want to do it deliberately. You want to have some control over the process, and you want to access the benefits faster, so you don't sit around and wait for it to happen to you around the edges and the whole world to change around you and force you to do it, right? Of course, many organizations, it ends up happening anyway, unfortunately. So we really see that you have to have real commitment, and you have to have sustained effort. We see organizations that try to be social for 6 months, and then they say, well, we only got a little somewhere. And the data used to show it took 9 months for a social business effort to really show, just real traction, like genuine engagement, either inside or outside the organization. And we also now see examples where people have done it faster, but we now have a lot of data points from really big companies. It takes longer than a year for really big companies to do it. It takes 2 or 3, or like BASF is still, they've had this journey going back to 2007. They're doing great things, but it took them 7 sustained years, to get there. And so this is for the long haul, and so that's what we've really seen. Change is hard. You have to keep at it. And by the way, the data shows the benefits are worth it. That's the good news. But this is no different than ERP. Michael can tell you, how at the same stage, ERP was having a higher failure rate, so it's very interesting to watch.
And it's sustained effort. I'm assuming the ones that are successfully able to, on average, in 9 months, see the fruits of their labor. Sustained effort at all levels of the organization, and if there is one level that's most important, is it the C-suite, is it the grassroots, or really it has to be a holistic approach?
Well, it's interesting because middle managers are probably feel the most threatened by social because they're no longer going to be the gatekeepers of data or power or anything really, technically, right? That's what they feel. And IBM's recent social business survey showed that middle managers, only 22% of them felt prepared to support social, which I think that's a real indictment. If 22% of all middle managers statistically are reporting that, we've got a problem. I think we've done is there's so much commitment from executives, and there's so much grassroots behavior change in people's consumer lives that they bring to work, that the whole middle layer of the organization, which is what really drives a change down into an organization, isn't prepared, and I think that's part of it. So because we do see executives, all the survey data shows executives go, yes, of course, social media is how we're going to work, and what is it? More than half say it's important now, and 86% said within 3 years it'll be one of the most important ways that they communicate. So all that's done, right? Now it seems like it's kind of the middle of the sandwich is the next part we got to work on.
You know, I recently was talking with a CIO, and he was a very innovative fellow, and he was describing how his organization, which is a large company, implemented some platform, it may have been Yammer, I don't recall, but some social collaboration platform. And ultimately, the CEO of the company said, no, take this out, because there was a perception that there was time being wasted, that the employees were chit-chatting, what have you, and he didn't see the value. At the same time, this company, which is manufacturing, has a collaborative manufacturing platform, or a platform for manufacturing that allows engineers around the world to collaborate together. And it's very, very focused. So the value there is clear. So it seems to me that this change element that you were just describing is the fundamental issue, but at the same time, demonstrating the value, you mentioned ERP, demonstrating the value of ERP can be pretty clear in terms of manufacturing results, of financial efficiencies, and so forth. But how do you demonstrate the value of social collaboration in a business and fight this type of perception?
Well, yeah, because you don't, it's pretty easy to see, if you're a company making widgets and you sell widgets, there's a lot of value being created in that process. When an organization says they become a social business, you say, all right, well, great, but what does that really give you? And so we have to make parts of our business, we have to adapt them to a more social and participative way of working, right? And then measure that somehow. And nobody, the gold standard is to have a control group and then do something differently over here. The control group and then your social business operations, and then compare the two, and no one ever does that. So a lot of organizations really rely on survey data, but some areas it's pretty obvious that there's a big win. Things like social customer care. You can very easily see how customer service representatives can handle a lot more customer issues. Customers have a much lower barrier for contacting the company. It's much easier for them to do it. There's no waiting on the phone anymore. They tweet, and it's all asynchronous, right? And so we see in our work that there's about a 1/3 cost savings in moving to social customer care because you can support customers so much better, and they actually like it. And we see that 86% of consumers have reached out to companies over social media to get help. So this trend is happening, and it's low-hanging fruit. Most companies are already engaging in social customer care to some level. They're often doing it badly, but they all see the value in it. So we take specific business functions, just like ERP focuses on supply chain and saying, let's make that faster and more efficient and do new things we could never do before. Social allows you to do this exact same thing. Say, look at marketing or look at sales or look at customer care, and do it faster and more efficient and do things you could never do before.
Yeah, I mean, we don't hear ROI of phone or ROI of email, and yet ROI of social continues to be a discussion amongst companies and executives. Do we need half of the global population on social media before we'll stop thinking about, whether the ROI question should prevent us to be more collaborative, more accessible, more in that knowledge sharing mode? It's in the size of company, and you have IBM reference in your book again. I mean, if a 500,000 employee company can have 40,000 active bloggers and be a social enterprise, then there's really no reason for any size company to avoid, as you said, a trend that's coming your way anyway.
So part of the discussion for a lot of companies isn't the opportunity, right? I think that they kind of, by and large, get it. I think some are still concerned that they won't get the benefits inside the company because it's not the way that they normally work, and it'll take them years. Most executives won't do something unless they can get results in that year, right? If it's something to get down the road, most executives are on quarterly reporting windows, and they can't. They need high impact and they need it now. And social is not something that I think is going to happen quite that fast, and it hasn't traditionally seen that. But nevertheless, it's easy to point to where the value is, but it's the risk side. I was looking at some great data. Altimeter summarized all the social media crises over the last 10 years and said, what are the biggest risks? Employee time wasting is one of the lower ones, in fact. What the highest risks in social media actually are, they almost always boil down to inaction, is the inability to respond to crises, inability to, someone has a poor experience with a company and they just tell everyone about it, and like the whole Applebee's thing that happened, a few months ago. It was a disaster, and it was just poor response, poor engagement. And the now see, if you look at the last 10 years of social media risks, it's been poor implementation of social media. We saw it with Toyota in the accelerator crisis, BP in the oil spill. They all got absolutely destroyed in terms of their brand reputation. They lost tens of billions of dollars because they didn't engage in social media. So there's actually a lot of risks of not doing it now. It's actually much bigger than the risks of doing it.
Dion, it seems like we're kind of mixing two things here. One is outward-facing social media, and the other is internal collaboration, social media platforms, social collaboration platforms.
Are they two different things?
You're the guest. I mean, the dynamics are certainly different. The dynamics of Facebook.
Are they? I think we learned. I think we learned otherwise. So when I go into large organizations, I see the following. And this is a pattern. I've been talking a lot about this, and it's a nuanced point, but it's extremely important. I go into an organization and I see there's an internal social team and an external social team. And they each one have chosen social business platforms and tools. They've developed processes to engage and collaborate with that constituency. They've hired community management teams. They've hired accredited education programs. And they've done social business twice, once on the outside and once on the inside. Now, if I gave you an email tool and said the only person you could talk to is someone inside your company, you want to talk to someone out, I don't do that. You want to collaborate with your our business partners? I'm sorry, we don't do that. Oh, you want to talk and work on a customer problem or collaborate with him? Oh no, we don't do that. What we've seen is just like email does not impose any restrictions on the audiences that you should be engaging with, right? You can talk to anybody, collaborate with anyone, right? And it's the same thing on the outside too. We see companies all the time create social environments that their employees don't have access to. It's insane. And we've created this weird silo situation in organizations. And McKinsey, the famous management consulting firm, did this wonderful piece of data a year ago. They surveyed 3,000 large companies. And they discovered that the organizations that didn't just do it on the inside or just do it on the outside, but the ones that fully networked their organization, they were by far seeing the biggest results in social. They were a small cohort, but by far they were seeing much greater ROI in terms of bottom line profit, ROI, efficiency, when they didn't have barriers to social. And we see this over and over again. We see it in our social business councils. Social is not something that you prescribe. It's something you actually enable, communication and connection.
So from your perspective then, it seems that you're looking at it as social infrastructure that can then be applied in an external-facing way or applied in an internal-facing way. But at the go ahead.
Well, it's a social business is one single continuum, I think, is what we've learned. I've tried to make this point over and over again in my blogs, and so those who've read it will I think I'm belaboring the point. But what did Salesforce just announce this week? I think it was. Is their community offering, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, mobile app community offering, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was just, we see all the vendors now do this. Their customers have tried to be social, and they realize there's all these weird barriers. I can't talk to this person. I can't collaborate there. I'm artificially constrained because we had this very narrow vision. Business functions started out by going social, so just customer service or we see social supply chains, a big deal. I did a case study on Teva Pharmaceuticals. But it was all these functions that individually did these tactical experiments. Now as businesses are going social, they look in and they go, I've got wikis and I got microblogs, and I have customer communities, and I've got social collaboration, and none of this stuff works together. I've got a social mess all over the place. I hear it from the IT manager all the time. I'm surrounded by social. We didn't go about this the right way. We have all of these silos. We created the worst IT silo problem we've ever had, and it shouldn't be that way.
You recently wrote a blog that talked about the realities that exist between marketing and IT, and I'm wondering if some of these silos that exist is because you don't have different C-suite and the leadership working together. In fact, you predicted, I believe, in the blog that CIOs may become more chief infrastructure officers, and that this perhaps emergence of chief digital officer is because IT is not necessarily focusing on enabling the business. So my question, what is the ideal relationship between a CIO and CMO, and how important is that relationship in terms of this continuous sustained effort of making sure the business is more collaborative and co-creating value?
So I think we're moving to a place where engagement is something that we need to have as a strategic capability in our organizations, right? The social channels, obviously, but people engage in all kinds of different ways, and we've done it very piecemeal up until now. And so IT has enabled that piecemeal approach, right? We're gonna create a customer care self-service portal on the web. We're gonna have a customer care desk you can call in to get help here. We're going to have a sales team that you can contact over there. And so the customer has to figure out who in the organization they have to talk to all the time. Engagement is very fragmented, and we're making our customers do all of this thinking about how to actually work with us, right? Who to talk to and what channel they should use. And as we add more channels, they get more confused about what's the best way to work with us. And so I think that's been part of the problem, is IT is just doing whack-a-mole. They're like, here's your mobile self-service app, here's your web portal, here's your call center application to support the call center. And so there's all these things that we're giving them. And so one of the things that marketers, I think, can do is they're really good at focusing on creating a simple consumer proposition for a messaging and whatever it is. And they have the skill of boil down and probably bring some simplicity to all of this. We certainly know that they understand the people equation much better than IT. CIOs and on down, they're just not experts in human engagement, and I think that's also what CMOs bring to the table. So I think the Chief Digital Officer is very much becoming kind of our next generation CIO. It's the strategic use of technology in an innovative way, whereas the CIO is going to become like the PBX guy was 25 years ago, right? 30 years ago, where it's really important to have this new communications technology, but pretty soon the PBX guy didn't get invited to meetings because he wasn't solving business problems, right? That's not somebody you would call, and I think that's what's happening.
That is the risk to IT if they don't adopt more innovative ways of thinking that are aligned, particularly with the strategic objectives of the organization. Last week on our show, we had Kim Stevenson, who is the CIO of Intel. And we asked her this question about the Chief Digital Officer. And she had a very interesting response. She said that if you need a Chief Digital Officer, right, it means that IT is not providing something, IT is lacking, not providing something that the business requires. And by the way, she made the same point regarding shadow IT as well, that the business has needs, and if IT doesn't fill those needs, then water is going to flow and seek its own level, and the business is going to do it for itself.
So part of the problem I see is that, unlike the marketing department, the IT department has an ever larger demand made on it because of the proliferation of technology. The explosion of mobile technology, the explosion of SaaS and online applications, the explosion of hundreds of highly relevant communities that people want to engage in. There's so much pull, and to expect one small service organization to deal with a technology that's growing exponentially, right? So every year we see, we go from having 10 smartphones to 100 smartphones to having 250 smartphones on the market right now. Same thing with the app situation with apps is much worse, right? We've gone 4 years ago, virtually no mobile apps to 1 million mobile apps, and everyone's got an IT department in their pocket. And so what I tell most CIOs is that they should expect 10 to 100 times more IT in their organization in the next 3 years. And nobody ever pushes back on that. When I say that, they realize it, well, of course, that's true. Now, not core applications, not mission critical. So one of the problem is our existing model for IT is broken in a highly proliferated universe. When we have almost infinite choice of applying apps to solve business problems, you have disposable IT. It doesn't cost anything. Why did we have the IT department again? Is it to keep us secure and safe? Maybe, right? I think that's probably one of the most important jobs in this world of proliferation, where we have so much choice and so many options that people want this. They want to have 10 or 100 more solutions that are lighter weight, that solve a really important problem now and immediately get out of the way. And so we're seeing the IT landscape changing completely, but the traditional model can't offer the solutions. It's a choke point for all of this innovation, and it's hurting businesses, I think.
So do you think it's lack of resources coupled with more of a traditional IT control versus collaboration? As Kim Stevenson talked about, I mean, she's managing 6,500 employee IT organization, and her mantra or cultural attribute is customer at the center. And she has her employees shadowing different lines of business and really understanding how technology can help grow the business and accelerate execution velocity. So is it lack of resources with this, as you said, explosive growth in consumer IT, mobile and apps and so on and so forth, coupled with perhaps the right mindset that's required for success? I mean, how much of it is a more business acumen and collaborative culture of IT versus just pure resource challenge?
So I'm going to say something fairly provocative because I think the message isn't getting through to IT organizations. And I talk to a lot of CIO councils, a lot of them. And they all, when we talk privately, we all have the same realization that their IT departments in general are not getting it. CIOs are getting it. Some of the other IT leadership is getting it, but the IT department as a whole is not getting it. And that is, they lost the war. It's over already. We already saw 10 years ago, 10% of IT was shadow IT, not under the control of the CIO. We're now at about the 40% mark, and Gartner's already said we'll be at the 90% mark in 3 to 4 years. 90% of IT will not be under the control of IT. It's done. We're almost at the halfway point now. It's only literally 18 months to 2 years, and it'll be official, right? So, and IT will be relegated to core apps, and the organization we already see they're already pulling SaaS and mobile apps. I go to a well-managed organization. I ask them, how bad is your mobile application problem? And they shake their heads. So I hear CIOs talking about their Dropbox and Evernote problem, and I go, well, that's the least of your worries, right? There's the other 1,000 apps they're using as well. I talked to a guy who had rolled out unified communication, and he couldn't understand why hundreds of people were calling in trying to get the mobile app to work. He didn't even know there was a mobile app for the unified communication platform. People were discovering it. They wanted to use it on their mobile devices. They were figuring out how to connect it, and then when it didn't work, they were calling the IT department in droves to get support. So we see this. People are solving their own problems, and I would say at this point, IT has to regroup. They have to retreat, regroup, and figure out how to make it all safe and secure, and largely get out of the business, the way of the business, who are doing most of the leadership. I think the latest study I saw recently said that IT spend is shifting wholesale to business units, and that's very interesting, I think.
Yeah, actually, we had another guest we had on our show was Mark McDonald, who is a group vice president and what's called a Gartner fellow. He's an analyst at Gartner. And we asked him about this statistic, about IT spend shifting to the business. And his response was this. He said that, in fact, what's really taking place, it's not IT spend that's shifting to the business, but the overall strategic importance of technology is growing. And so therefore, the overall technology pie is growing, and a disproportionate or an increasing share of that overall technology spend is being controlled or governed by lines of business and administration, marketing, and so forth. So he was not as nearly as down on IT as you're describing. I mean, you're describing a fairly fatalistic and inevitable situation. Is that your intent?
I'm really observing that the data shows that that's what's happening. And actually, I think he's probably right. I think technology spend is growing quite a bit, although it's just making my point that all the growth is outside of IT, right? We don't see IT budgets increasing more than 4 to 5% globally this year, right? But technology spend is increasing far more than that.
Yes.
So that's the challenge. So what I want to do is I'm trying to issue a call to action. I'm an IT guy, by the way, so I can say some of these things. I've been in IT for many years and had a leadership role in IT in large organizations, and I know the mindset very well. And that is, everyone is always beating us up for when things don't work, and no one ever gives us credit for when things go right. Right? That is the story of IT. And so you learn never to stick your head out. Deloitte did a great study on CIOs recently, now about a little over a year back, and it said that only 1 in 10 CIOs are willing to be revolutionaries. Well, we are in the time of the greatest period of technological change ever. We're shifting platforms from desktop to mobile. We're moving away from software installation to app stores. We have going away from email and old communication methods to social. The user interface is going from GUI to touch. And I'm just touching on a few of the big changes. We're getting rid of relational databases that are being challenged by NoSQL and big data and Hadoop and all of that. But most CIOs are not willing to make any major changes. Yet the only way to catch up is and to resolve, I think, the fact that everyone's routing around the traditional model for their business solutions more and more, and we're nearly at the halfway point. And people go about their business saying, well, things aren't really different. They are different, and we need to respond to it.
Well, I mean, it's clearly a big issue, and one of the problems is that the corporate expectations of IT, there's this chronic conflict. My friend Gene Kim, who wrote a book on DevOps, talks about a concept from Goldratt regarding core chronic conflict. And basically the point is that the business expects IT simultaneously to innovate, save money, and protect the corporate assets. And innovation and saving money as both being prime mandates are in conflict with one another. So IT from that perspective is being set up to fail.
I agree, and I think that IT is really good traditionally at enforcing things, right? Making sure standards are being met and that things are secure and that stuff works together. And I'm a big believer that we still need IT, and there's an important role to play. But when IT becomes Dr. No, which it has to, as more demands are made, the answer is always no. We don't have time, and no, you have to get in line behind other parts of the organization, and that infuriates the business when they say, "You've got 3 major projects." They're going to take you the next year. You can't do another major project because nobody will increase your budget. So I have to wait a year. Well, our business moves too fast for me to wait that long. So I'm going to solve my own problem. And the problem's actually much worse. And so IT has to look. When I see a very successful IT organization that is dealing with this successfully and doesn't have a lot of shadow IT, because they do exist, is when I see an IT department that's an enabler that says, I'm going to let you actually solve this problem as long as you keep me involved. I think you can solve your own problem better, and if you can't, I'm going to tell you that I think I should solve it. But we see IT departments that put themselves in competition with the business's own solution, as opposed to telling them no and wait. No and wait isn't an answer anymore.
So what is your call to action? I want to make sure I missed it. Are you asking CIOs to not only default to yes, but also have the departments think of more revolutionary steps to enable business growth?
So what I think is that IT is going to become much more decentralized is becoming much more decentralized, and that I think IT, the call to action is for IT to empower the business, to be an enabler and not a roadblock, not a choke point. I think that is actually a huge opportunity. It's being done by a small number of CIOs, and we know that it can be done in many different industries. But and by the way, when I give this version a much more full-strength version, IT people always say that I'm unfairly picking on them, and I believe that IT has a hugely important role, but we can really up our game and improve how we do service delivery.
In chapter 3 of your book, you do highlight companies that are doing it well, and before I ask the question, I have just a sidebar question. You always have wonderful visuals and graphics that you have in your blogs, in your book. So what are you the artist behind the visuals? Because I find that I can read your blog and then look at the visual, and the visual captures the essence of your message in a wonderfully. So is it do you outsource the work, or is it your work?
It depends. For the book, they took my graphics, and a great artist by the name of Bill Keegi redid them. So the ones in the book are my graphics that you normally see in my blogs, but have been adapted to a consistent style. Yeah, thank you very much for the kind words.
No,
but, it's part of my personal style, because as an enterprise architect, I've long had to sell multi-million-dollar projects on the strength of one visual. And that makes you very, very good at taking ideas and putting them in. If the only way to make something happen is to make someone understand it, then I've learned that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And as you know, I don't write and do anything without a matching visual, because I find that that's the best way to communicate.
So who are the companies that are doing it well? Because I suspect that the companies that are doing it well are also great storytellers, and whether they're using visuals or not, becoming socially fit is not a hygiene issue, it's a health challenge. So
sure.
I believe purpose and passion and a good story is what inspires that sustained commitment that you spoke about at the beginning of the show. So can you name a few companies that stand out in your mind as far as social business transformation?
So first, let me call out 3 companies that are doing IT using a model that I think is actually healthy and adapted to the current technology landscape, which is a very fast-changing one. Everything's changing, and so these are examples that they're doing some social as well, but these are examples of leadership IT. One is Casey Coleman. She does a fantastic job at the GAO. UV Kochar, he's the CTO, but also the CIO of the Washington Post Company, has been doing a very innovative service delivery that I think shows that you can keep up with technology change and be a right-sized IT department that's nimble and agile. Geir Ramleth over at Bechtel has been doing extremely good things, cutting his budget, yet doing more service delivery every year. It can be done. So I hope they don't mind me calling them out.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I was going to say Casey is great. Casey Coleman is great.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Well, and you, first time I talked to her was with you, Michael. So that was a great conversation. So I think BASF is a great example of a large traditional company that is demonstrating really good business results. They've had a long-term commitment. They've rolled out social business platforms internally. They're saying their project management processes are 26% faster on average since they've rolled out social. They still have a little ways to go in their organization, but they'd be the first to say that they've got broad traction, tens of thousands of workers using it. So it's a great example. News Corp is another good example, but they've been having some problems recently, so people maybe don't give them the credit that they deserve. But they are a very good example. Burberry, Angela Ahrendts, their CEO, has done a fantastic job of connecting their 10 million Facebook fans, their 15,000 business partners, and their 6,600 workers are all connected together using social tools. And we all know how much Mark Benioff loves to trumpet that story because it's such a good one, right?
And SAP as well, which is quite interesting. Both SAP and Salesforce use Burberry as a key case study.
Yeah. I stopped citing tech companies because you know what? When I talk to regular business people, they go, it doesn't surprise us that a technology company uses technology well. So what? And even though the SAP story, I actually opened the book with it because it's one of the very best. It's one of the most significant ROI. It shows how customer communities can revolutionize how you engage with a market and drive business results. So I do. It's very good, but it has no credibility on Main Street.
Right. It's funny. It's funny being in a tech company. I would counter that with the challenge of collaboration and inclusiveness and co-creation of value is quite hard in a tech company. You know, engineers and technologists as a whole, you know, I find are a bit resilient to you know, a transparent ecosystem. But having said that,
I think that's right. I don't think the tech companies get enough credit for how difficult it can be if they're not a company that has tried to ensure they hire great communicators. Tech people actually often tend to be very poor communicators and consequently not so good at social.
Great. You know, we're going to have to end fairly soon, but before we do, I think it's important to offer advice to CIOs and to CMOs on how to better cooperate, and the same with business stakeholders. And then I'm going to ask you about advice for vendors, for technology vendors. So let's start with advice for CIOs and CMOs, Dion.
So I think the challenge is going to be to some degree in working together. They use two different sets of language. I think the vocabulary is very different often. While we do see many examples of CIOs working together well with CMOs, we also see plenty of examples of a big gap there. And I think that you need to have more contact between the two. And I think tearing down the wall between the CIO and CMO, getting past the language and communication barriers, because they see the world very, very differently. And I think that IT leaders also need to have a slightly more market focus, because everything is really becoming customer-centric. If you look at how businesses will survive, it's by holding their customers very, very close and having sustained relationships, not just selling them things, but having real partnership-type relationships. That's the future of business. We see, you know, everyone in the industry is talking about that. And if the future of business is having these strategic relationships with your customers, that means IT has to get better at having an understanding what that means. And so I think that's where they come together, is how do they partner and how the company engages in the market. And so I hope that partnership happens, and I think that needs to be the focus.
And what about, so clearly partnership is a crucial element, and one of the themes I think throughout all of this discussion has been the importance of change, and how do you manage the changing processes and changing expectations among these various groups. But what about 2 or 3 quick points of advice for the line of business stakeholders who want to get more out of IT, or want to find a way to engage with IT that's more positive from the business perspective?
So I think IT people are very frustrated with the business assumes that they're ignorant. I think there's a lot of assumption that the business doesn't understand what's possible, and that IT wants to just fix their problem, and that they know better what the right solution is. So many times I see the business really complain about IT gave them a one-size-fits-all solution rather than trying to really understand their problem. And so I think that the first thing to do is negotiate some ground rules. It does not matter what the official or the old approach for how IT and the business engaged. I think they need to sit down at the table and they need to create rules of engagement for today's market reality, and say, I need something more customized. I think we live in a world where we have far more options than we've ever had before. Businesses don't have to have one size fits all. And it's really important for organizations to up their game on it. And then I think IT also needs to say, if I can't do the very best job for you, I think you should work with somebody who can. And that's a brave statement. But if you're not willing to say that, then you're not willing to. You don't really care about the customer. And I think we see IT organizations doing that, right? Saying, if I can't do this, I want you to find, and you can find someone who can do it better. I will support you and make that work. I think that's the grown-up thing to do, but I think that's something that's going to take a while to work through.
So Dion, you're traveling around the globe in the upcoming weeks and talking about all of the insights that you shared in your book and your blogs. And the Social Business Summit is something that you're driving. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And what's the theme and the main message that you're delivering at the Social Business Summit?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for mentioning the book throughout the show here. As an adjunct to that, our organization hosts something called the Social Business Summit, socialbusinesssummit.com. We hold it around the world in places like China, throughout North America, in Europe, and we bring together the people who are very interested in talking about social business, social marketing, social engagement, and bring thought leaders in that region to come together and talk about it. Those listening in want to attend. We still have London, Sao Paulo, and Tokyo events. Awesome. Send me a message on Twitter, and I'll get you in.
Oh, pretty nice.
Oh, that's great.
So that's a pretty kind offer.
That's
so if
great.
You're listening and you want to attend the Social Business Summit, and I think you said London, Sao Paulo, and where was the last one?
Tokyo.
Tokyo. Send a message to Dion, and he will get you in.
Yep.
And Dion, let's just finish out here. I always like to ask for advice for software vendors. So just very quickly, which software vendors are you working with that you think are doing a good job? And in general, advice for enterprise software companies to play a stronger and more proactive role in supporting innovative IT that is deeply engaged with the business.
If I had a consistent complaint about vendors, about customers, and turn that into advice, it would be the following, is that vendors often forget the customer exists after the sale happens. That they care so much about that customer until the software is delivered, the service is delivered, whatever it is, and then it's over. Customers are almost always not looking to buy software or buy anything. They actually want to solve a problem. And that problem actually usually doesn't go away the moment you acquire a problem. And we often see customers buy something and then they try and use it and it's not quite right. And the vendors say, well, we'll try to get that in the next version. And it never comes down in quite the way that the customer needs it. And I see this over and over again. Vendors, in the end, try to force their product to fit the solution and then try to make customers want it. And now there's so many options that we see that increasingly not working anymore. You can almost look at any offering, and there's always an alternative now. And I think that we see a lot more customer churn because of that. So I would say that vendors need to get better at building strategic relationships with their customers. Social is certainly a way to do that, but just in general, the whole model is that customers, almost all enterprise customers want someone they can stick with on the long haul and will work together and partner together with them. I think that's big. And I think in our industry, in the social industry, we see a few standout companies, but none of them are immune from what I just said. I think Jive Software is on the vanguard. They're a very good company, and they're very customer-centric. I like some of the things that they're doing and the customer councils they have and the feedback. They really take customer feedback to heart from what I've seen. IBM is very good too. We see them quite responsive and really providing innovation to their customers in so many ways. And they're one of the most innovative big companies I think that exists out there. It's very interesting to watch and see that. I'm watching the reaction on both of your spaces to see what you think about some of this stuff. But
I agree.
Yeah. So those are good examples. Vendors that I think don't really get it though, like Microsoft. I don't understand what's happened to them. They've gone from being a leader 10 years ago. Windows XP and everything was great. SharePoint was taking over the world and all of that, and now they're just not adapting to the market and to the way customers expect right now. But I think that they don't have to. I think the way that the world has worked, that they'll take forever. If they're going to die, it'll take them 30 or 40 years. So they're here to stay. It's very interesting to watch and see the dysfunction though.
Great.
So if I could summarize your social business, the marriage experience is better than the courtship experience.
Yeah.
You have to stay connected, after the sale is complete, and make sure you are delighting your customers.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it. The marriage has to be better than the courtship.
Great.
Great. Well, we're really going to have to go, but before we do, I just have to say that people don't know, Vala, people don't realize that Dion is a major gourmet chef.
We're not. I mean, he'll say he's an advanced novice. No. Based on my description, especially from folks who've experienced the meals that Dion prepares, absolutely a subject matter expert and a foodie.
Well, thank you. And certainly not anything close to a professional chef, but I'm an experimenter and I am a foodie, and so. Yeah, I like to do. I take the latest cooking technology. Nathan Myhrvold, Microsoft's old CTO, created that new book series. He spent $25 million, built his own building, and he said, let's take every new technique from sous vide to ultrasonic cavitation machines to all sorts of things you've never heard of before, and to really take and apply technology scientifically to create great food. And I'm trying to get through the cookbooks. It comes in this plexiglass cube. I think I showed it to you, Michael.
Yes, you did.
And the books itself weigh about 60 pounds, and it's amazing what's possible now. So yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had when we apply technology to our food.
So if someone tweets you about that, like the conference generosity, would you possibly consider preparing a meal? No, I'm kidding.
All right, we're now all going to be tweeting Dion.
Tweeting Dion.
Exactly.
And if we tweet multiple times,
right.
do we get to enter the contest a few times?
Right. Suddenly Dion's clout score is going through the roof.
That's right. Well, maybe someday we'll crowdsource a meal, right?
That sounds good. All right. Well, I think it's definitely that time again. So Dion Hinchcliffe, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for the Duchess Group. Dion, we are very grateful for the time you took today to speak with us. And Vala,
sure. Great.
Thank you very much.
Yes, 10th episode.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity, and look forward to coming back someday.
And we'll see you out there on the rails, Dion. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you very much.
Have a great